Oh, great.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah, so
this is a two-parter.
yeah, continue. Go ahead.
Okay.
So you were talking about
Yes, meteors. So, I mean, meteors hit the Earth literally every single day. You can't see them because
because
of
they
the
typically burn up before they even hit the ground.
well, and also the city lights
Yeah.
kind of out. But
I think what was the last one we had? I think it was in like Russia or something like that.
yeah,
right?
the last big one, and it like blew up in the sky
Yeah, it
and
even
like
broke apart.
damaged thousands of buildings
Yeah.
or hundreds of buildings. And I think even some people had to get like hospital attention because
Really?
of the.
I know. All I saw was that it set off a couple car alarms, and I knew it did some damage to a couple buildings. I didn't know the extent of it. So I knew it was happening in Russia and things like that. I think one of the most interesting things, at least as far as like stuff like that, is I was watching this documentary, and it talked about how, like, for example, the next trillionaire or the first trillionaire in the world is going to be someone who finds a way to basically mine meteors. And the reason by that is basically the abundance in resources like platinum or gold and things like that are in resources. So with the moon being as cold as it is on that side, we haven't really, I don't know, have we ever really traveled to that side of the moon yet or no?
Oh, the far side. You're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Well, I mean, we haven't.
Yeah.
China has a probe.
China
They
has.
landed there last January.
But no like real excavating or anything like that of that side? No.
We've, probably the amount of non-Earth material that we've actually picked up and done anything with,
Yeah.
it could probably be put in a big trailer truck.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we really haven't done any resource extraction or
Yeah.
processing.
So I would love to see kind of like what's on that other side, and how they would combat with like the temperatures of the cold and things like that in order to find resources on that other side.
But now, the far side gets like just like the near side does.
But have we been there at a time where that side was exposed to us to where we can actually be?
I mean, it's always been facing like the moon is tidally locked with the Earth,
Yeah.
so like the same side always faces the Earth.
Yeah.
But the other side goes through like the same phases as this side does. It's just we never see it.
We never see it.
We never see it. Some people call the other side of the moon the dark side, but
Yeah, the dark side of the moon.
it's only dark whenever this side's light. But whenever this side's dark, that side's light. So
Okay.
because you could think of it like
But
spinning
have
around.
we ever traveled during the time where that side was?
Oh,
the dark side
we've
was
never
light?
been to the other side
That's
with
right.
people at all.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I would love to see if they go to a move, try to plan it to an opportunity or try to plan it to a time where that side is not facing or that side is lit up basically, so that we're able to go actually explore that side of the moon. There's a whole bunch of real estate in a sense that we have not explored yet.
No, definitely.
And if we've only seen this half of the moon, if we've only seen like the water molecules and things like that, just based on the cusp, imagine what's really on the other side.
Yeah.
And as far as meteor is concerned and things like that, the resources that might be, and like you said it yourself, with the craters there that have been from years and years ago and things like that of just things hammering onto the moon, imagine what's still on that other side as far as craters or as far as anything else.
Yeah. I know. I had a vision the other day of what's the moon like and like how would
Yeah.
you talk about it, and this thought
We actually had a giant telescope, and we would hook up the Canon, the camera, and we would be able to take pictures of the moon and be like seeing pictures. I'm gonna see if I can find it on Facebook. We used to post it on Facebook, as well as like Saturn and stuff like that with the telescope.
I was thinking the moon's sort of like grandma's attic. You like go up and you look at it and you're like, oh, I've been there, I've seen everything. But at some point you actually go and open up a box and you're like, whoa, what's this?
Yeah. Interesting.
So, but how do you feel about it? Do you think it's a good thing to do, or?
I think it's a good thing because it's so much of that planet that we still haven't seen. Just like our planet itself, there's so much of the ocean that's still uncharted, unseen, things like that. There's still a lot about our own planet that we don't even understand. As far as like resources wise, I'm not sure if it would basically be the best use of our resources as far as like taxes and other things like that go. And the only reason why I say that is because environmentally we're dealing with a lot as it is right now in the world.
Right.
So as far as like, I think what do they estimate the cost of like making a rocket and sending something to the moon now is how much? It's a couple billion. I forget the number. We did in my old environmental class. We did a study on the cost to build and the cost to create a rocket and send it to the moon now.
Well, you mentioned Elon, and do you know about the Starship he's building?
I heard like stuff like that, building an outpost and things like that. I heard stuff like that, but I haven't really dug too much into it. No.
He's building a rocket that he's calling the Starship. It used to be called like the BFR and something else before that. But it's in Boca Chica, Texas, which is next to Brownsville, is where they're building it. And it's going to be the most powerful rocket ever built, but the cheapest per launch. Not the cheapest per pound, but the cheapest per launch.
He's trying to do something with reusable rockets.
It's
too.
100% reusable.
Yeah.
And he thinks that on this rocket, not only could they use it to take like 100 people to space at a time, but they could also use it for point-to-point travel on Earth. And so you could get like from Houston to like New Zealand in like 30 minutes for the price of like a first-class ticket on an airline today. But I mean, that's like transformational. I mean, it's like, as long as you're like throwing away parts of the rocket, it's always going to be non-economical. I mean, even a bicycle that's relatively cheap, if every time you went to somebody's house, you threw it away and had to build a new bicycle, you would still never even bicycle, even though the bike is cheap, It's just like, that ability to use it.
My question would just be, like I said, the cost for NASA to do it versus a public traded company or a company like Tesla or company like SpaceX to do it. Because whereas it's their money, it's the company's money and things like that, and they're doing stuff like that, and they're obviously making a profit. I know their margins for profit aren't massive because they really do it out of the kindness of their heart pretty much. Versus like NASA as well, just like the resources that it will take to do that. I understand it, but my concept, I really want to understand just like what that money is really going to and why are they putting it away versus stuff like right now that we could be doing to better our planet too, right? Because we're getting to a point where mass climate change is happening and things like that, ice caps. I think like even this year, I'm originally from Boston. Even this year, the winters have gotten super screwy, and because of that, it kind of messed with the eternal clocks of the trees and the landscape and stuff like that. Because they would kind of like
they were like sprouted at the wrong time.
Exactly.
And then the winter would come and they would die.
Exactly. And so because of that, it creates now a shortage in what we have as resources.
Right. And then it affects everything, the insects that depended upon it, and the birds that depended upon those. And
so versus the cost of, let's say, exploring another planet, which is obviously super interesting and things like that, versus bettering our current planet. So that's just the inner conflict that I have versus like, we've been to the moon and that's cool. We haven't been to the other side of the moon, which is very interesting. Obviously very interesting because but what possibility or what benefits will we find from being on the other side of the moon?
Yeah.
Is it just for research purposes, or just to understand what the other side is, or is it to mine resources or obtain resources and things like that?
Yeah.
That's a little bit more understandable, right? But at the same time, look at our planet right now.
Yeah, that's true. But in terms of our planet right now, like, what needs to be done that isn't being done in terms of fixing it? I mean,
so there's a lot of different things. Like, for example, I think places in like Europe and stuff like that where they make it like I want to say a big change to try to make homes eco-friendly, like by creating solar power, things like that. We can easily change a lot of the buildings we have or a lot of the properties we have here into solar power.
Sure.
The problem with that is a lot of energy companies don't want us to do that because we're taking money away from them. There's people out there that have found ways to use the ocean and convert the ocean into portable drinking water.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
If we do that, then we have people, the water companies and things like that, coming at us because they don't want us to do that because then we're taking money from them. Right?
Or even like rainwater harvesting.
Rainwater harvesting.
Why?
There's literally states that prevent you from putting up water caches.
That's and then you have like problems with flooding. I mean, it kind of helps in two ways.
But the thing is insane that if you have places that have droughts,
Yeah.
but they prevent you from putting up water caches. So it's just insane. And then that's why we have mass heatings in places that are typically cold, and then mass coolings in places that are typically hot.
Yeah.
Like I think Houston snowed 2 years ago, like one
Sure.
of the first times in a while.
Was it? I mean, yeah, I guess it was like last year or something. I mean, I remember having like an inch of snow in my car.
Yeah, and I remember
was
like,
like,
the whole
whoa.
city shutting down because they didn't know what to do.
Oh yeah, the whole ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that
So,
too.
Like I said, my interest is really like taking that money and putting it elsewhere, as long as it doesn't outweigh the benefit of really going over there. Like if there's some conclusion, something that we know, or more of a guarantee that we know on the opposite side of the moon that's going to really help us here. If it's not, it makes no sense, right? Because there's things going on this planet that we need to really focus on now that we're not.
Yeah.
Right? You got things where.
Well, just out of curiosity, if you were to guess what the current NASA budget is per year, about what would you say?
I have no clue.
Would you say more or less than 50 billion?
50 billion sounds kind of there. Obviously, things have gotten cheaper, but at the same time, I forget. I'm trying to remember back in high school what our calculations was. I know it was something. You tell me what was the number?
23 billion.
Really, yeah. So
23
definitely
billion.
shorter than what I think. I think we were maybe a little bit more than 50 billion when we did our calculations. That was like a group of students in high school, so we were using numbers that we were finding.
And this is just the annual budget, like
Okay.
not the cost to go to the moon or anything. It's all the money that's spent on operating the International Space Station, the commercial crew program, the Earth observation satellites, the sun satellites sending rovers to Mars.
But what has that yielded? I know it's yielded a bunch of information and data and things like that we can implement in understanding how our world can change with climate change.
Right.
Right? But it's kind of like gambling at the sense where like we're using money to kind of understand the concept of how our planet could be affected with climate change.
Sure.
Versus using that money to help our planet prevent climate change.
Yeah, but I guess let's say we took the entire 23 billion and we spent it to combat climate change. What would we actually spend the money on? I mean, you're there with a bank account with $23 billion. What do you do?
One of the first things is, I guess, see what are the main, before even spending, really do an extensive research on what is causing climate change, right?
And that would cost money.
And that would cost money.
So how much would you spend on that?
I have no idea. I can't, it would take me a while. I'm a numbers guy, so I would have to see everything planned out, and that's how I would basically be able to manipulate the numbers to see what we would put the number, like what we would pay for what in a sense.
Right.
But obviously the first point would be some sort of research. There's a lot of research that we've already done extensively on. Mm-hmm. So gathering that research and putting a team of people that understand climate change and the way that climate change works and things like that, and then implementing tasks and things like that that'll help. Like I think, what was it, back in like the 80s or something like that, we did something with refrigerators and stuff like that.
Like the refrigerant?
Yeah, the refrigerant container and things like that, as well as like hairspray and all these other type of things that they had that ended up, I don't know if they said it tore a hole in our ecosystem.
Right, the ozone.
The ozone layer. Yeah. And I think, how many years has it been of that thing just being broken?
I think it's like kind of repaired itself, actually.
It has? I haven't, like I said, I don't remember the research and things like that. And I haven't done any extensive research on that. But just off like the history of stuff that I remembered back then, like I said, stuff like that, figuring out those things that are causing damage to either our ozone layers or our ecosystems or anything like that, and then implementing either laws or stuff like that to prevent stuff like that. So for example, one of the things that we can do is companies that use a certain percent of plastic and create a certain percent of waste should either be taxed a percentage higher, which then will invoke them to want to use more eco-friendly stuff and things like that. So not only does it kind of makes them spend a little bit more money, which obviously is gonna create a decrease in their profits.
Right.
But the benefit of that is it'll make them switch to things that are biodegradable and things like that, or things that are reusable, right? For example, there is no reason why we need like straws, for example. There's ways without straws and things
Well,
like that.
at least not disposable straws.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
at
no
least-
reason why you
yeah.
couldn't have one straw,
Yeah.
carry it around, and you're good to go.
Exactly. So stuff like that, or things like that. Typically, when I'm
Or
at
even
Starbucks-
like the stir, like the little plastic stir for
Like,
the.
You know how many people go through those?
Yeah,
They use
I
like
just, like,
20
throw
just
it
to
out.
They use 20 just to stir their thing, and it's just
We're
like,
a wasteful society, aren't
It
we?
is. It really is. So, for example, one of the things that I do here when I come to Starbucks, I typically just get like a bottle of water.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Like, for example, styrofoams aren't good.
Sure.
I have one. The lady gave me one, but styrofoams aren't good.
Yeah.
Because they're not really biodegradable. There's actually a petition right now in order to prevent the use of styrofoam.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually a petition I signed. So, for example, when I come to Starbucks, I get a bottle or a cup of water. I don't get a lid or a straw.
You know they have ceramic mugs.
Yeah, you can get or you can get a ceramic mug. But if I'm like leaving and things like that, I'll just
Right.
get like the cup.
That
I
makes
get a
sense.
plastic cup, and I won't even put a lid on it. Or what I use is I use my hydro flask. I just have them fill it up.
I mean, that's a better way to go. Plus, it's
Yeah.
insulated, keep it cold.
Yeah. The only downside is the energy and the energy used to create it.
Uh-huh.
So that's where you kind of get into a different kind of threshold where it's like, is the energy and is the resources to create and mine whatever this is, like aluminum or steel or whatever, the resources to mine that and the gas they use to excavate the floor as well
Right.
as to get all the metal and stuff like that, and then turn that metal into this cup. Is all that resources and is all that energy and things like that more or less than the cost, or not just the cost, but the resources and stuff like that to create, say, plastic or styrofoam?
Well, I mean,
The end result is yes, it's reusable,
right.
but
I mean, you can even pass that down to your children and their children. I mean, there's there is a person that should never need another container
Yeah, if
ever.
you have a container.
If you're able to pass that along, I mean, and it's like sturdy, it's like not breakable.
So the concept of us going to the moon is obviously very, very cool.
Uh-huh.
But I think the concept of us going there for resources and things like that is cooler.
Right.
Versus the concept of us just going there for just like to start sending people there again for basic researches, or just to really explore what we've really explored there in the first place. That's why I mentioned if we go there, let's time it to a point in which we're going to explore the other side,
Sure.
right? Versus going there and seeing the same thing that we just saw.
Right. Well, I mean, last time we went on the equatorial regions. This time we're purposely trying to go to the South Pole, where we think those resources are.
Yeah.
So it should be kind of interesting.
But as a planetary, like as us here on Earth, I want to know what's the benefit that that's going to hold.
Right.
Because I haven't done the research. I know you've done the research, so you tell me.
But
What is the benefit of us going over to the other side of the moon and seeing water molecules and things like that?
I mean, one thing is, if we're able to turn that into rocket fuel or water for astronauts or air for astronauts or, material to like grow plants, then that's a lot of material that you don't need to send from Earth. And so it makes exploring the moon and the rest of the solar system a lot cheaper if you get at it easily. So,
But if we use that money to help our planet here in discovering new ways of energy and discovering or helping the ecosystem to grow more food and things like that, then the cost will be cheaper to even go there and find resources on another planet anyways.
well, sure. But I guess the thing is, I mean, there's several different ways to approach the problem.
Yeah.
So one way is if you look out 500 years from now, are we only on the Earth, or have we branched out to the rest of the solar system? I mean, that's really everything can be boiled down to one of those two choices.
I think succession or improvement or any kind of growth is a double-edged sword, right? Because we're at the point where if we go there, we can find resources that'll help our planet, versus helping our planet right now to maintain and grow resources that we already have here.
Sure.
So succession really is a double-edged sword, because we're at that point whether can we really do things here, can we really help here, can we really do stuff here, versus can we do it on another planet and then bring it back here.
Right.
So I just want to know what do those numbers look like, really? What do those numbers look like? Because if you can use that 20 billion a year, instead of going over there just to find the resource to create more rocket fuel to send back and forth to make trips less expensive, we're still going to be spending. Okay, let's say we find, how much do you think rocket fuel costs to send someone to the moon?
Well, I mean, the problem is not the cost of the rocket fuel itself, but the rocket fuel to send the rocket fuel, and then the rocket fuel to send the rocket fuel to send the rocket fuel.
Okay.
So, like, for each pound that you send to the moon, might be in the neighborhood of like $50,000.
Okay.
So a gallon of water is like 11 pounds.
Okay.
You save like $1 million, $500,000 just by sending.
Just not having to send water.
Not having to send the water.
Having to get the water there.
Right.
Okay. So how many gallons of water do you think they would typically send on a rocket?
Well, I think each person needs on average about 10 gallons a day.
Okay.
So if you have a mission that lasts say 10 days, and you have 4 people go, then you'll need like 4,000 gallons.
4,000 gallons.
Now you might be able to recycle some of that.
Yeah.
So maybe you cut it down to half, 2,000
Yeah.
gallons. So you need like 2,000 gallons of water for just people.
Times about 50,000.
Times about 50,000. Yeah. So
Okay,
that's
so 2,000.
That's like 10 million, $100 million bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that cost of doing that versus saving that and going and just launching over there and then getting that resource and having that resources there, that's understandable because it makes the cost of us having to spend money here. Like I said, it's a double-edged sword.
Right.
But the upfront cost of having to do that right now versus using that right now here.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. That's the difference. Those are the numbers that I want to see in order to be able to make a real educated guess or a real educated decision on whether it's a good idea or it's not good idea. Like I said, it's super interesting. But as an economic standpoint and as a standpoint versus currently helping our planet or using that money to help our planet now versus discovering things on another planet. So,
what do you think about the inspiration value? It's hard to get excited about. Hey, we're gonna go clean up the mess we made. It's a little bit more exciting to go, hey, we're gonna go explore new things and we're gonna learn more about the universe.
If we don't clean up the mess we made now, we're not gonna have an opportunity in the future to explore anything.
Yeah, I know, but it's always a balance, right? I mean, you don't go, I'm gonna make the house spotless before I go watch a movie.
Yeah,
you
maybe
kind of go
clean a couple rooms and take a break and then clean a couple rooms. But right now, we haven't been cleaning a couple rooms.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
That's true.
So, right. So in that analogy, basically the Earth being the house, right?
Right.
If we helped, say, places were, for example, like Yemen, right? A mass amount of malnutrition and like not being able to grow crops or any resource. Forget what the actual term is. What they call when a city like that can't grow food and things like that. Forget what the term is. I'm trying to remember it.
But people are starving in Yemen?
Yeah, but people are starving in Yemen for like the longest period ever.
But I mean, there's really no reason why they should be because, I mean, look at all the food we throw away.
But you know how long that has been going on?
How long has it been going?
That's the longest famine in history. In history ever. That's the term I was looking for, a famine.
A famine, okay.
So this is the longest famine that has ever been going on. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
So that's insane to me that you haven't
I haven't heard anything about that. I mean, really, most of our problems aren't technical. They're like people problems, right? I mean, the reason why people...
Well, it's not just that. It is kind of technical because as a society in the U.S., right? Or the countries that either we represent or the borders that we represent that border Yemen, right? When you create a society of people that are distressed,
right?
You create more terrorism.
I agree.
You create more destruction because people become at a point of chaos, right? Or, for example, if you're at a no-win solution, if you're starving already and you don't have a roof over your head, you have all these problems. You might as well go to the next village aside and then try to get whatever you can there.
No, of course.
So we actually are at the point where us doing that. For example, look at what we did back then when we attacked Japan.
Right. Okay.
If we didn't go back and help Japan and things like that, who do we mainly get our resources from now? China, Japan, areas like that.
Sure.
Tokyo. Think about all the cars, things and stuff like that we get imported from Japan, from Toyota to Lexus or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
And all the other resources as far as like food, we bring like an insane amount of food over from China.
Like,
It's insane.
but we also send a lot of, America's like the breadbasket of the world,
Yeah.
we send like wheat and soybean and rice.
Yeah, but
That type of
that's
thing.
exactly what I'm saying. The idea where it's like it actually works in our favor to help stabilize other cities or other countries and things like that, because, like I said, it prevents less terrorism, it prevents less attacks, it prevents less destruction and things like that. Not to mention, okay, you think about NASA, you think about futuristic things,
Sure.
right? Okay, here's the concept. The person who knows the cure to cancer
Right.
is probably already
No,
born
agreed.
in a third world country.
Right.
But instead of using that brain power that he has to develop those skills of understanding, whether it be economics, medical, or science,
Right.
he's too busy focusing on surviving, or she is too busy focusing
Exactly.
on surviving.
Or, hasn't been, has the answer, but nobody's listening. Has no way to communicate it out.
And
or-
the reason why is because they're too focused getting food in their belly
Sure.
or drinkable water.
Right.
So don't look at it as like an economical standpoint, which would be amazing for us, not to mention a resource standpoint, which would also be amazing for us, because you got to think about resources that we get from, like I said, Japan and things like that. After that, we wouldn't have Nintendo.
Right.
I'm a gamer. If we wouldn't have Nintendo, if we didn't help them,
We wouldn't have cheap computers.
We wouldn't
I
have
mean,
cheap computers
it'd
and
be-
things like that for
yeah.
coding and all types of stuff.
Right.
So the idea where it's like, just as an economic, if you don't want to be moralistic about it, right? As an economic and as an economic and a resource standpoint, it already helps us.
Right.
But if you want to take it as a moral, further than a morality standpoint,
Sure.
the brain potential,
Oh, I
and
agree.
the brain power in these people all across the world that we can help and help them structure and things like that.
Okay, so magically, you've been invested with like magical powers, and you want to unlock the potential of the brains in human.
Yeah.
What would be your first step?
You gotta establish outposts and things like that to help people in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Once they get to a point where they're able to stabilize themselves, have food, and create an economy in which they can profit from,
Sure.
and they can really grow from. Once you have those, you ever heard of? I think it's Maslow's theory.
Yeah,
where
about,
it talks
you
about
have-
the basic functions
right.
of food.
You need
sleep,
food,
and then things
water,
like that.
and then
exactly.
you
So
need
we
social
branched it
connection.
as that in a standpoint, right?
Sure.
Where we help them on the basic standpoint of like food and resources and things like that until they can really start to do that themselves.
Right.
Once they start to do that themselves, then we can kind of help them and establish better schools and give them more resources and things like that. And then you're giving these kids education. And when you start to give them education, that's where the real power of the future is.
Right.
Right? And growing our education, because the way we teach is like, it's historic. Right? So we taught kids differently now, and if we taught people...
But we're not teaching problem solvers.
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
teaching,
We're
test
teaching-
takers.
Yeah, test takers, exactly. We're teaching test takers, we're not teaching problem solvers. So we're starting to teach problems and things like that, and ways to come across problems and things like that. Just like I said, the amount of people in those areas like Yemen or anything like that,
I feel like the brains here that are well fed
they don't
still
do
aren't
nothing.
being
They
used.
don't do nothing. They don't do nothing. So,
I was like
the
thinking,
people here that are comfortable and have money in their pocket, or even middle class, they still struggle to a point where they're still not really gonna put their true brain potential and things like that into stuff. But like I said, if you have,
even if we get people just thinking about a problem, like in like a bus or a waiting room or what have you, like, look, you don't know anything about this problem, just think about it,
and not only that, think of what's going on right now in Palestine.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what's going on in Palestine as well?
About the whole like the two-state solution and kind of
Well, so the whole thing in Palestine is Palestine was there before anything else, right?
Right.
And it was through the Palestinian people. And basically, I'm not 100% an expert on this, but I know a fair amount to where basically Israel established the state of Israel there, right?
Sure.
even though if you look at the maps from hundreds of years ago, it was
Sure.
Palestine.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
after World War II,
Exactly.
you know, we had the Holocaust. Everybody
Exactly.
was like, you know, they want a homeland. We feel
Yeah.
horrible about
exactly.
this.
Exactly.
Um,
But now you have mass attacks happening against Islamic people or Muslims and things like that over there.
Sure.
And now it's creating kind of like a different scale. It's kind of creating you're pushing people out of their homes and you're creating more conflict. When you're doing that, when you're creating more conflict, like I said, it really unbalances everything.
Right.
Because when you create more conflict, when you're pushing people out of their homes for any purposes, let alone religion purposes and things like that, and you create that disbalance, the borders of surrounding you are going to become more inflamed, or not inflamed, but like violent or anything like that. And like I said, violence or arguments or anything like that literally acts completely against any progression or succession
Sure.
as like a humanity society could have.
I mean, basically, I mean, you don't have businesses moving in there. You don't have people making loans in there, that region. You don't have like the normal functioning of everyday life. People don't plant crops because why bother? It's going to, you know, you're not going to be able to keep the land.
Yep.
You know, just kind of whole thing. Yeah, I mean, these are like huge problems, but
That's why I said, just for example, I think they said, for example, Jeff Bezos, I think just like what, 13% or like, I don't know if it's 13 or 30, but either 13 or 30% or something like that of his net worth can eradicate the famine in Yemen.
okay.
Just the thought of that is insane.
Yeah.
That someone out there has the power to really end a famine.
But, I mean, don't you and I have the power to end the famine? I mean, like, I mean, if we really wanted to...
Not to the extent that
Not as
someone-
easily,
Yeah, not as
maybe.
easily.
Not as
That's what I'm
easily,
saying.
but-
So if you have a famine that's been going on for multiple years, we're not going to eradicate that problem.
Why not?
How?
Good question, but that's the first question, right? Is that
Yeah.
I mean, but
So I know
but people
how.
skip
I know
over
how.
that.
I know how.
How
but
is
we
that?
don't have the resource. Like if, for example, the way I just told you, creating an infrastructure in which they can grow crops, they can grow food and things like that.
Imagine if we got like a container ship
Yeah.
and turned it into a farm, and we could actually grow like crops at sea,
Yep.
and then bring it any place where we want and,
Yep.
and produce food.
But how do we get the money to do that in the first place?
I mean, you have to want to. I mean, there's
No,
a process.
Trust me. I've done things and I've tried to create like bio, or not just bio, eco-friendly and biodegradable things. I've tried to make biodegradable plastics. I've tried to do research and things like that to create energy where it's like if you're powering a bike,
Sure.
or if you're on the bike for a couple hours, you
Right.
have light for a couple hours and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
So there are ways like that.
Sure.
But at the economic standpoint, we don't have it. At least I don't have that. I'm not a multi-billionaire where
But
I can just...
I mean, but even if you had to, I mean, the thing is that this is always kind of something that I think a lot about is that money is actually nothing, right? If you took like, you know, $23 billion and you gave it to George Washington and you said build the Empire State Building,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen because he doesn't have the equipment, he doesn't have the people, you know, what have you. But if you get like a group of people together and they like try to solve a problem, I mean, oftentimes you're able to do more than people with money, you know, with
Yeah.
like creativity. I mean, it's about
There's no denying the fact that money is a main implement in creating those things in the first place.
Right.
Because everyone has a family to feed, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of taking, like, putting a group together, right? And then being able to have them work for almost nothing,
right.
versus putting that time doing something more productive, which is, like I said, we live in a very selfish like world. Everyone has the mentality of like, it's my world, it's like this is my universe, this is I'm living in my world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is a very selfish mentality that we have. But the thing is, like I said, people have families and things like that, so the idea of working for less part money and things like that, versus like if they got a donation from these big wigs and these people out there that have multiple billions of dollars to establish things like that, I mean,
But you know, I mean,
I'm all for helping and putting it like, okay, let's put a team together, right?
Yeah.
Let's put a team together.
Let's cure the
and-
famine in Yemen.
Yeah.
Let's
put a team
do it.
together. Let's put a team together. Let's create a way in which we can grow crops and things like that on the seed, and then transport them to those countries that need help and things like that, or refugees. Let's go ahead and do that. Where do you want to start?
Where I want to start. I guess first of all, I'd like to understand how many people in Yemen need food, and then
the whole area.
What's the number? Like, how many people are we looking at feeding?
Say 200 million.
Okay, 200 million, and let's say we want them to have 3 meals a day, and they need to, so it's like, how much food and water and everything will we need? And then, safely getting there and what have you. I mean, what would be cool is to have like the ship kind of, a food factory at sea.
25 million.
28 million people. 28 million people. So essentially we need...
so 28 million times 3 would be the amount of meals.
The meals we would need. So about 90 million meals a day. And each meal is going to be about, 5 pounds?
What do you mean?
I mean, like...
In weight-wise?
In weight-wise, yeah.
Okay.
With water and food and...
Yeah.
So we need essentially 450 million pounds of food a day. What does it take to produce 1 pound of food? That's the other question.
That's the question.
And what would be cool is there a way to produce food using like manufacturing style processes where, or even, I mean, like you don't want to plant the crops and watch it grow up and then, have to wait like,
to harvest.
I mean, what you want is to be able to put like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen.
To just create water.
And you just like turn a crank and out pops like food products. Might not be the best tasting stuff.
Yeah.
But
at least it's something to start.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's like, kind of like, some type of bacteria or algae that you could like put the, the waste material and raw materials in, it's growing, and then you're like turning that into like some type of food.
Like methane, or even like energy, like gas and things like that.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a fascinating problem. We should do something about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm here. If you want to do something about it, let's do something about it.
I want to do something about it.
Let's do something about it.
Yeah, we gotta start. We gotta map this out.
Yeah.
We gotta make it happen. So
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've done extensive research on things like that we can do. The problem that I always like eventually get into is the cost to really do it, right? Because that's always gonna put like a cap on how far you can really go. Until you get to the point where that's already established and that's already growing and that's already doing everything to where it's just passively making it and then continuing.
Sure.
The hardest part is really that upfront investment, whether it be time, money, or anything.
Sure.
That's why I'm saying. That's why I want to know whether, for example, if we made a petition and we went to NASA and was like, hey, instead of us sending someone to the moon to do that, can we take a portion of that to do this? And then that runs itself, and then that way we're taking that money to put it into all this stuff, which is starting to establish and run itself.
Well, I see the two problems being tightly combined together.
Yeah.
If you're able to produce food for Yemen, you're able to produce food for anybody. And you're able to potentially create a system that can produce food for anybody, anywhere.
One of the only other problems I've seen with that, because I've looked to GMOs and I've looked to things like that, there's like ways that you can grow like crops and stuff like that in some of the most harshest environments ever due to GMO. A lot of people are scared of GMO because the fact that we don't really know, or like cancer-causing agents,
sure,
and things like that. So
but really, I mean, if it's a question between starvation and cancer, let's go with cancer. I mean, at least
that's just me. I've gotten into so many debates about this, and I've gotten into so many different conversations about whether GMO is good and whether GMO is bad. You should eat organic, or you should not eat organic, and etc. like that. I've gotten into it multiple times.
I mean, a hungry person will eat anything. Yeah. Even stuff. I mean, all they're interested in is getting the sense of hunger to go away.
So I think if we were able to implement something to where we can grow crops in harsh environments and help people like that over there, at least until they get to a point where they can start doing it themselves.
Right.
And then we can kind of get rid of that short-term stuff and then have them really growing good products, good produce, and things like that, which can feed the community and the environments like that. So yeah, like I said, there's a lot of stuff, but then we get into things where like, I think Yemen was bombed a couple times by the U.S. and Gaza was bombed a couple times by the U.S. and Israel and things like that.
I know. Yeah.
I think there's a lot at foot. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah, there's no reason why people should be hungry in this day and age. That should be a solved problem.
Yeah.
Like
That's
globally.
why, so I love how this started off with like NASA and things
Uh-huh.
like that. But like I said, the reason why I brought all that stuff up is I'm a big believer in like time and energy and things like that.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Putting the time and energy into exploring NASA and stuff like that. It's great.
excuse me.
No, you're good. It's great. But putting the time, at least at my point, putting the time and things like that to really grow the planet itself
Right.
to a point where we can really establish and safeguard stability.
Sure.
Then we can go and discover any damn planet we want, right?
Right.
Because we'll be good here. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. We're not good here yet. If we were stable to a point where everything was fine, everything was good, and stuff like that, and there was no famines, there was no world hungers and things like that, there was no homeless and things like that, or we can like do stuff to eradicate that by creating things like that, right? So we did stuff where we created. We would have to kind of infrastructure a whole different like economy, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, what do you mean?
Like for at least in Yemen, because right, we would have to basically establish crops, right, and then we would have to give the crops to the people who are there. Well, we can kind of establish it in a way.
We
where
should
the
give it
people,
directly to the people, not to
Exactly.
the government. Otherwise, you're just creating
But
another power
the
level.
thing is, like, who's gonna like maintain the crops? Who's gonna harvest them? Who's gonna water them? Who's gonna do that? We can make it into where the people who are starving and things like that can maintain the crops to where they reap the crops and stuff
Right.
like that.
I mean, like, you have labor.
Yeah.
You just need to kind of create this system to make it usefully employed
Yeah.
and incentivize it. Like,
Yeah.
they get
And
their
then-
first choice of the food or
And then
whatever.
once they do that, then you can really extend to like resources and stuff like that. And then whatever, I'm not sure what resources Yemen has available,
Mm-hmm.
but then utilizing the resources Yemen has and then marketing it to.
I mean, one thing is, I imagine they have a lot of sunlight. Like, 20, like all year long,
so maybe
being so
creating
close
some
to
sort of
the.
solar system where they can store energy and then sell energy to other
Oh, that could be
states
something,
and
yeah.
things like that. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to structure an ecosystem, because once they have stuff where they can start giving to other countries, that's why I said exploring their resources to see what they have there,
Right.
and then we kind of use that to kind of grow them even more by marketing that or selling it to other countries that doesn't have it
Right.
or don't have it. Yeah. Like I said, it's the concept of the summary of my entire conversation here is really the fact that the concept of traveling to other planes is amazing, right? But if we don't help our current planet,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
going to be no future explorations whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like I said, it is a double-edged sword. To where if we helped our planet now stabilize, I mean, think about how many other resources we'll have. Because
Sure.
if we have food in Yemen, or that's proof of growing food anywhere.
Right.
Or if we're able to create food on the outskirts of the oceans and grow products and stuff
Right.
like that, then the idea of traveling to another planet to get resources from that other planet
exactly.
almost disappears because we would have it here for an abundance.
Well, I mean, I think going out into the solar system is valuable in itself. Just
Yeah.
forget about needing resources out there. Like, I would like to come back in 500 years and see the entire solar system in the domain of human beings, and seeing us branching out into other stars and like the entire universe that appears to be capable of supporting life, but apparently we're like the only ones, maybe not. I would like to see us like branch out and like populate the entire universe with people and all the stories and all the experiences that would result in.
Like I said,
Just
it's something
kind of-
cool. It's something cool, but as a long-term investment, establishing stability in our planet to basically use it as a platform to explore other planets.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we get it right here, we can get it right anywhere.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just how do you keep stability from becoming stagnation? That's kind of like the other side of it. Because, I mean, you're able to create a perfectly stable system. The key is not to have any changes, that you get it right, but then every change is instability. It's not necessarily that, but cool. Well, anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate This is definitely has trumped all the other lengths of my interviews.
Cool.
So
I'm happy to hear that.
Well,
If anyone needs a realtor,
oh yeah, go ahead, give it a shout out.
I own a real estate company, so if you guys are looking for a realtor, you can email me at sajjad@qsplatinum.com. That's SAJJAD @qsplatinum.com.
And I can put your contact info